Not the sports news on Africa with Romy Titus and Kevin McCollum.
So on the line we got Mthokozisi Dube from the editor of the Far Post, and we're going to be talking about the Nedbank Cup games this weekend. Mtho, how are you doing this morning?
Good, Kev. How are you?
Lekker, man. There's two Kevs in the studio. Romy's not in the studio, but sick today. Sundowns made a bit of a meal of their win, didn't they?
Yeah. Look, I think when you're a coach at Sundowns, you know very well that you need to win trophies. I mean, there's no room to fail to win any trophy. I mean, for the new coach, he obviously has to start with this particular trophy. So, getting that 2-0 over Mpenny home defenders, I think a very good one for them. And the sponsors as well, because you still have big three, in the competition. Pirates also in, Kaizer Chiefs still in. So I think it's quite a big one for the sponsor.
Yeah, it is. There's going to be... We're still a bit worried about the fact that there's only 7 of the 8 teams in the quarterfinals. When is the Royal AM saga going to be resolved?
So it's a bit of a tricky one because last week I'm told the PSL board met. There's obviously deliberations to see what the way forward would be, and maybe when you look at the PSL handbook, the logical thing to do is to expel Royal AM, meaning they would be obviously thrown out of the league, and they've only played 11 games in the Betway Premiership, and so the teams that have played them would lose those points, and it would take the form of a 15-team league. And then in the Nedbank Cup, obviously they would have to forfeit, and so it would mean Milford and Skukuda would have to play to see who goes through to the last 8. Because at this stage, there's no way. I don't see them, being able to fulfill any of those fixtures. Even if they do, let's say they play Milford and they win, you still have the problem, So I think the logical thing is to expel them, from the league, and which I think is what's likely to happen.
Is that what we would do? If you were in charge, and you had to make a decision now, would you expel Royal AM from the PSL?
Absolutely, because it's causing problems for the league. I mean, how do you explain this to the sponsor? I think you'd have to sit down with the sponsors and just maybe, explain to them that yes, we were going to play this number of games, but because Royal AM is unable to fulfill fixtures, we have to obviously change and find a way, try and meet the sponsor halfway. I don't know how, but I think that's the logical thing to do, because you can't have a scenario where the Nedbank Cup gets to the last 4, and you still have one. It just doesn't make sense, honestly. So I think I would make sure I remove them, and because the PSL handbook actually says if a member club fails to fulfill its obligations, they face expulsion. So I would do that.
So the other elephant in the room on tour is Orlando Pirates, a 3-0 win against, 3-1 win against Baroka, which is great. But everybody's asking, where is Monnapule Saleng? What is your take on that?
It's very, I think this is one thing that I've not really understood about South African football clubs. Monnapule Saleng last played in January, if I remember very well. And he had missed a number of games before that. But there's never been communication from the club, in terms of what the situation is. There's never been communication from him or his management team. I mean, I saw on social media, there's a journalist who posted something about the whole saga, basically saying it has to do with a disagreement over a salary. His agents actually commented and disputed. His former club, where he was on loan, the chairman also commented and said, no, it can't be the issue of the salary. So it it threw me into further confusion about the whole thing. And I mean, if it were in Europe, you would know exactly what's happening. I mean, the club would actually come out and say, this is a situation. Or the coach would come out and say, I mean, in the case of Manchester United, Ruben Amorim comes out and says, I'm not happy with Marcus Rashford. He's not going to play under me. It's as simple as that. You don't have a scenario where Rashford is not playing. You're not seeing him in the squad for 8 weeks and no one knows what the reason is, So I think that's the tricky part about, South African football clubs.
Speaking of the coach, and you don't know this, Mtho, but I got somebody thought I was Jose Rivera the other day in the Woolworths. So I figured I'd give you my best impression of him at the press conference, and this is what he says, right? He says, I don't speak about health of my players. It's something belongs to private space, and the moment the club feels it's time to speak about which players are injured, how long they're going to take, and which moment of the process they are in, they will do it. It's not part of my job description. It's not an ethical thing. I know it would be nice to know how close is and what's happening with Saleng, but it's not going to happen. And therein lies the rub. He's just not saying anything. He's putting him on the list in the same conversation as those who are injured. So,
Well, injured, yeah. And we do know that he's not injured because we've seen him whenever he wants to train. I think he does go to training. I think there's 2 times where we've attended media open days and he was available training. But I noticed that he would be the last person to arrive, in terms of, because we would get there and do the press conference and then wait for training. So he would be the last. On those 2 occasions, he was actually the last person to arrive. You can tell he's not happy. But I mean, the coach is, sometimes he does speak about these issues when he's happy, especially when the team has won and the team is doing well. He does speak about these issues. Of course, not the issue of Saleng, but I mean injuries and all that. And I mean, we were all shocked when he said those words because who else should address because he's not just speaking to the media, he's also speaking to the club's fan base. They want to know where their player is, So I think I just don't understand that approach to things, because when you look at other teams, I mean, I've given an example of Manchester United, but when you also look at other teams locally, your Sundowns, the Sundowns coach will actually give an update. He's spoken. If I remember very well, he spoke about the situation of Roshin Deruk. He spoke about Lesibanku, that he was not happy. The conversation that he had with him to say, listen, I don't want you to get home and be grumpy, around your family because you're not playing. I'm happy to let you go and play at Stellenbosch. So he opened up on those conversations, and we expect the Orlando Pirates coach to also do the same, because the fan base wants to know what's happening to their favorite player. And he's very important for Bafana Bafana. I mean, he's an international. I mean, him not playing for so long means you don't have a Saleng, for the national team.
Yeah. So what would be his next step, do you think, if you were in his shoes? What would you do? Would you would you push for a transfer? Would you push for a loan move?
Look, I do know that his contract comes to an end in June, but there is an option which obviously favors the club. I would push my agency to engage the club, not to renew the contract, because if I'm not playing football and I'm not happy, and I'm not contributing anything to the club, it basically means if they trigger that option, it's another 2 years of misery. Yeah. I would ask my agency to engage with the club and say, listen, when this contract expires, let's cut ties, and I leave the club and go and start somewhere else. But that may be a bit tricky, because they would be looking and thinking a Kaizer Chiefs just across the street is actually looking at this player and they're waiting for him. Whoa. Because he's a player that the coach of Kaizer Chiefs really loves and would love to have in his team. I'm sure a team like Sundowns could also want to have a player like Saleng, So they may not want to let go of him in that manner, because then he would be able to join any club of his choice.
Now, you're speaking about Chiefs, and obviously they're in a happier space. Are they back in form, or do you think this is a bit of a blip? Sorry, Mdu's just shaking his head here. He's a Pirates fan.
Look, I think Kaizer Chiefs still have a long way to go. You can see also when they win games, you can see they're still very fragile. You can see they still need left back. I mean, after selling Tatewana Titloko to Libya last week, they need to replace him. They still need, I think, a lot of teams are going to be planning around that particular position because they don't have a strong player in that position. They don't have a defensive midfielder who can actually play the way the coach seemingly wants to play, So a lot of positions, I think they're playing, players that are not necessarily suited for those particular positions. I mean, Thabo Tsele is not necessarily a defensive midfielder. I think he's a box-to-box for me. He's an 8 for me. Mm-hmm. They still need a striker who scores goals. Yes, they signed Tashreeq Morris. It's been 4 games. He's not scored any goal. So they need a striker that will score goals and convert. Because when you look at the number of goals they've conceded, Nabi has been in charge 21 games. They've conceded 21 goals. That's not good enough. So I think there's still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, so looking at the next round, the Nedbank Cup, is it a possibility for Sundowns Pirates matchup? When is the draw and how does it work?
It's a possibility. And funny enough, your lookalike, the coach of Chiefs, of Pirates, was actually saying he would rather meet Sundowns in the final. But the draw is on tonight. So we'll see who they will face. But it's very much a possibility. We could actually see them facing off. But I'm sure the sponsor would be hoping that the big 3 don't meet until at least the semi-final. Then I think they will have a lot of mileage and the fans. I'm sure the fans would love to have the 3 big teams in the semi-finals.
We see Kaizer Chiefs could win. We prefer to meet them to the final. This for us is a good outcome.
That's very funny. Just reading your website. So this, you're the sport. You're the editor of Far Post at CZA. Do you write everything on the site? Because you have to get a day off. I mean, it's incredible the amount of work you're getting through.
No, man. So we've got a team. I think we've got a team of 8 journalists. So yeah. So I don't write all the content. We've got sub editors who helps out with the editing. So yeah, but I love writing. So I still want to write. I still want to go for assignments and do interviews and all that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mtho.
Thanks for your time.
Week.
All right. Thank you so much.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah. Always good. Always knowledgeable.
Listen live and on demand.
Welcome to Omni Sport.